This is huge. Everyone listen to this.
So a study from UC Berkeley came out and was viral over the summer, finding that several unnamed tampon brands having detectable layers of heavy metals like arsenic in the tampons.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be sitting here with Hannah Stein, and she is a Lifecycle marketing manager at Lola. So, Hannah, can you introduce yourself, your role, and Lola?
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to speak about Lola. So I've been there for just a little while now, since probably 6 months or so. I came from a theater background and decided to take the leap into DTC and joining a brand that is so authentic and transparent and focused on women and menstruators and doing the best thing for them has been a really rewarding experience.
Awesome. And I want to dive into your whole life.
Okay, let's do it.
Including theater. But can you tell us a little bit more about Lola, where people can find Lola products? I just want to make sure people have a good understanding of Lola as a company before we dive into you.
Definitely. So Lola is a brand that sells anything that you need as a woman or menstruator. From period care is like the highlight. Lola was one of the I should call it the first tampon made with organic cotton on the market and founded by women who were questioning what these big brands were placing in these period products that we are literally putting in our bodies. And that lack of transparency caused the brand Lola to be into conception. And so Lola offers things like period care, from tampons to pads, sexual wellness products, condoms and lubricant, vaginal care items, so things like wipes. And then also we have recently launched our postpartum line as well. So really helping people who are from A to Z as far as their experience with their bodies.
Amazing. Thank you. And can you talk to the audience a little bit about what a Lifecycle marketing manager means? We've had a couple marketing managers on the podcast prior, but Lifecycle marketing manager is a new term. So if you could explain to the audience, I'd appreciate it.
For sure. So I started in undergrad with marketing. And one of the things I did outside of school was being involved in a sorority. I loved being with those group of girls, and the role that I really loved while being there was on the member experience team. So making sure that these women who are already part of our sorority really love the experience and want to stay. So in combining my marketing love with this real joy I found in that kind of role, that's kind of what I would describe Lifecycle marketing as. It's once we have a new customer and they're a part of the brand, how do we make them love being a customer? How do we make them come back? How do we make them champion us as well?
Awesome. That's a really good description. I think as soon as you explained kind of like being a sorority experience manager, I was like, oh yeah, Lifecycle marketing manager. That makes sense to me.
Definitely. And I think there are so many different sides of marketing, but I was never like the visual, aesthetic, creative girly in marketing. I was always give me the Excel spreadsheet in marketing. So I really like the Lifecycle side because I'm able to be creative to some extent and doing some copywriting, but really it's more strategy, analytical, and technical.
I want you to touch a little bit on everything under your remit in your role. It's not just email. So can you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. So Lola being a cyclical product, right? We're talking about periods. It is really a very subscribable product. So what's really awesome about that program is you can set your subscription and forget it. So every month you have everything that you need for your period care. And so within that, it's not just emailing them. It's also providing a really excellent subscription program. So I run our subscription, of course, email, SMS, and anything that's related to loyalty. So giving them rewards for coming back. All those fall into Lifecycle.
And I know that you guys are going to be introducing a new aspect to your outreach, Lifecycle outreach.
Yeah, so that would be direct mail would be the channel that we're looking into. I have experience doing it in other areas, and as marketing gets tougher and tougher as channels that own paid and different kinds of new customer channels like Meta or a Google, where there is some gating to being able to market to those audiences. It's really exciting to have a channel, although it's maybe, I don't know if I could say sexy on here, but it's maybe not the sexiest marketing channel ever to get snail mail, but it's one that we're going back to because it works.
Yeah, Definitely. So now that we've established Lola as a brand and what a life cycle marketing manager means, I want to talk a little bit about yourself personally, Hannah. I know that you're from California. We're both California girls. And you actually grew up in the Bay Area. Can you talk a little bit about your experience kind of growing up and where you went to school?
Definitely. So from the Bay Area, I, in going into undergrad, really wanted to pursue the arts and theater and be in that world. And through some influences, decided that maybe a better route would be to focus on business, which was something I was interested in as well. So I chose to go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and study business, which has a really great program with a minor in theater. I think keyword in Cal Poly is polytechnic. So maybe not known renownedly for its arts, but somehow either way was able to make really great connections through that theater community, which got me my first job in New York, which was working in theater.
Yeah, and also just to be clear, lights came on, cameras turned on, and she was so poised. Hannah just showed up ready, and your comfort really was contagious because I was just like, okay, good. I'm like, I've got a professional. So.
Yeah, my joke is I like to call myself Tinkerbell because I need applause to live.
Aww.
Like, love that. Yeah, words of affirmation, stages, love all of it.
And I think it's like so cool that even though you pursued a marketing degree from a school that's not known for the arts, that you knew it was something that was a passion and important to you and that you kept it as your minor going to school. I think it's so important. Like, you don't have to give up the thing that you're really passionate about. I think it's really cool to be multifaceted, and it's really practical sometimes, like to pursue the arts, but then also have something else like your marketing degree that can help you in the workforce. And yeah, can you talk a little bit about what it was like balancing school, your major, and then how theater kind of like worked its way into the first role you got after school?
Definitely. So I was definitely more in the theater building than in the business building in undergrad, participating in shows, classes, all of that. And so a really amazing professor from my theater program connected me with an internship that was an advertising agency in San Luis Obispo for theaters, in theatrical licensing in particular. So when I graduated, it was really that relationship that led me to that first role in theater licensing that got me to New York. So it was a relationship with a professor that led to a relationship with an internship that led me to a relationship with the job I started at.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about this prior to this recording, but how important it is networking in your career. And when I was a student, there were just like certain steps. I was like, okay, you go to the career fair, you shake hands with everybody, you send them this like really formal templated email after the fact. And I'm not saying you don't do those things. I think, it's good to go to the career fairs and to introduce people, shake people's hands. But I want you to talk a little bit about what networking means, like really helpful, impactful networking, how to do that and what that looked like for you.
Yeah. I mean, when we're talking about networking, I always thought that's what it meant, is these like cold shaking people's hands at events or something, but it's way deeper than that. It's the people that you're around with every day, that you're constantly surrounding yourself with and building those relationships with, whether it is personal or work or school or a club or an event or something like that. It's people that you know, not necessarily these cold applications. So every role that I've had is from these kind of relationships where people really, really knew me, and it wasn't a separate kind of outreach that was just like, I hope that they like me.
And it's going to be more impactful the way that they show up for you or give you a recommendation or talk about you with others. Your best champions and the people that are going to give you the best opportunities are the people that know your work or know you on a daily basis really well. So the fact that you responded to a professor's job posting, right, for that first gig?
Yeah. So after I was in theater and learned that maybe that industry wasn't where I wanted to be, it wasn't what the dream was in reality, I knew I wanted to continue doing marketing because I really found a niche in it that I loved, which was Lifecycle, but maybe try it at a bigger organization. And so once I put an ear to the ground trying to find that role, it was through a professor from undergrad who had posted about a job that another former student they were looking to hire. And it was through that connection that I got that first interview.
And he posted on LinkedIn, he or she?
Yeah,
Okay.
he did, yeah.
So LinkedIn, guys.
Oh, 100%.
is big. Yeah.
Yes.
Like maybe not as admittedly fun as TikTok, but very important, especially, you know, seeking out those first couple positions after you get your degree. Like LinkedIn is so important. So yeah, talk a bit about that role that you found on LinkedIn through your professor.
Yeah. So I started out at Hintwater, which is a D2C beverage company that's female founded and really focused on providing a beverage that is water and still healthy but tastes really great with really great flavors and it's not sparkling. So I loved the mission of the brand that's really focused on wellness and hydration, and started out as an email marketer only. That was all I did was email and SMS, and then built that up to be overall lifecycle and retention and then senior manager of it. So that's how I started, from just email and SMS to really being direct mail, subscription, loyalty, and being able to own all those different areas once we have a first-time customer.
And so there are some younger folks that follow the podcast, which I love. And for them, pursuing their first internships and their first jobs, maybe they don't have that Klaviyo experience or attentive experience. What advice would you give like a young person who's a student in order to get the first jobs or get that first experience that allows you to step into those positions?
I'd say a big piece of advice would be curiosity. So within your role and what you're doing, maybe at your internship or through school, there's always going to be people around you doing something else. And I think there's real benefit to being curious as to what those people are doing, and being curious also in your industry. So if you're seeing some kind of trend or there's an industry that you're curious about, being open to finding those trends and presenting them to the team you're working with to start that channel. So if you can be an idea person and be curious about what other people are working on, then you're more likely to be invited into rooms that you're not in.
And I think that as a young person, a lot of times when you're an intern, you get some of the tasks that are really get the coffee or organize this alphabetically, or the types of tasks that are not always the most stimulating. And so I think especially as a student or an intern, being the ideas person, that's a way that you can be given some tasks that are a little bit more stimulating and are a little bit better for your resume. And that's where you could be like, hey, let me learn how to use an email service platform like Klaviyo or like MailChimp or what have you. I think finding ways to practice or cultivate rather your skill set in the roles that you have, whether it's an internship, a class, or even a club that you're a part of, that could be like your very first baby step.
I totally agree. And I also think it's important to remember you're there for a reason. You have value and ideas and thoughts that they don't have yet. And so being comfortable and confident in that and knowing your worth going into an internship, doesn't matter if intern is on your name, if you're bringing coffee, you have something there that they don't have and they just don't know it yet maybe.
Yeah, totally. So back to that role. So you're doing marketing. You came to that position already with some skills under your belt, right? From the last role?
A little. And I think I mainly had a marketing undergrad to my name. So I think that helped. While I had the relationship that got me like the contract role that turned into the full-time role, being able to say I have this marketing background and I know I'm excited about it. I think they just liked, to be honest, I think they liked the tenacity, and it being a startup, they're looking for someone who's going to work hard and show energy. And so I think that's what made the difference.
Yeah. And I think like even pursuing a position and being proactive, that really helps you a lot, especially as like not a lot of people are doing that actually, like young people going for their first jobs. So you really stick out in a good way when you're able to reach out to a hiring manager, know how to present yourself in a polished way, like the experience that you do have.
And I think that's where the theater background, well, maybe I'm not doing it full time, but in every sense, I'm using the skills I learned. Like if you go into an audition room, the audition starts when you've parked your car or when you've gotten to the address. It's not just while you're up and they're looking at you. You're always being watched. That is so true. Yeah. So I think all of those skills of always presenting, not in a fake way, always be yourself, of course, but like presenting a version of yourself that
furthers your objective.
Exactly. Is always really valuable. And I mean, I still get nervous like when I go to new events. Like a weakness of mine is that I have a really hard time going up to strangers. But
same. Actually.
Yeah, right? Like I have a pump up song every time I listen to it before an event. Confident by Demi Lovato.
Okay, I'm listening to it right after this.
Oh my God, yeah. Since I was like 15, every first date, first job interview, first event, on my way here, like I am listening to that song. So I think there's a lot of like value in something like performance where you learn confidence, being okay with rejection, presenting yourself, like all of that comes through from those kind of skills, even though I'm not on like a stage, but I am in a presentation room.
That is so interesting interesting that what you said about like your audition starts like when you're parking your car going into, that's another way to look at it, is like putting yourself in the right mindset. When I was an account executive, more in a selling position, going into my calls, I always tried to carve out a couple of minutes to just kind of sit and be centered and like prepare myself to present myself a certain way to the person I was talking to. Not like in a false way, but just to get yourself in the right frame of mind to communicate intentionally, being intentional in the way that you show up. I think that's so unique. It reminds me actually of some of my guests who've been on the podcast who were doing sports. Like you're a theater girly, but we've also had some athletes on the podcast. And I think they've kind of mentioned similar things about sports giving you the resilience, physical too, because like you were like waking up early or doing a lot of physical stuff, but also like mentally dealing with a loss or dealing with challenges and not flinching away from it, facing a challenge head on. And that I can totally see the parallels with that being a performer and being on stage, staring at, we've got 3 cameras and like so many lights, and she is just arriving right now.
Well, there's a part of it where performing, like, yes, it is, you know, there's usually a group of people on stage, but you're on a team of one. Like when you're auditioning in that audition room or anything, you are trying to get something for yourself. It's not for your team.
Yeah.
So you learn that real like intrinsic motivation that like, I mean, I always feel like it's those hyper masculine TikToks of no one's coming to save you. But like it is kind of like that with work and life, that like theater has really taught me to bring my best for myself.
Yeah, totally. That is so cool. So I want to talk a little bit about, you're at Hint at this point in the narrative.
Oh, right. Yes.
The narrative of your life. And you are a Lifecycle marketing manager at Hint. Was that your title?
It got to senior, but yeah.
Okay.
Yes, just like that.
And what was the biggest takeaway from Hint that there was learnings in each phase of your journey, like certainly a lot of learnings from the theater company that you worked at. Can you talk about how maybe the vision of your career evolved or how that was a stepping stone to Lola?
I think I learned more of what I like doing as far as this lifecycle marketing niche that I'd carved for myself. And I was excited to try it with another brand that is also so mission-based, and not only is mission-based, but follows through on that. So I think that was something that I definitely learned. I also was really excited about a role where I could really take what I'm doing in my free time of being in school and really apply it to that role, and where I could really be the expert in the room on this channel and have the confidence that my team has in me to make those kind of decisions.
Because you were at Hint for 2 years, right? And then you were at the theater company job for 2 years. You were pretty impactful. You got a lot done in just 2 years. If you grew to senior and you were the expert in the room, that's really cool. Like what advice do you have for people to rise in their position, to have a more leadership or more senior position?
I'd say what we talked about at the top of this, like relationship based. Yeah. While it is like in the numbers of how you work, it's how you communicate your work.
Yes.
So it's how you talk about things. Because what's funny is like when you do some kind of like marketing campaign, you get a ton of KPIs or things that measure the success of a campaign.
Key performance indicators.
Yes, exactly. I was like, how do I translate?
People don't know KPIs.
And you get a lot of those, and you can make your narrative how you see fit. And so being able to talk to the work that you're doing is super important, because it's those relationships, it's those people who get to decide how you move within the company.
Yeah, and also like being able to communicate the impact of your work is extremely important. It's important in terms of negotiating raises, also how big of a team you have, how much budget your team has. Totally. So I think really cultivating that communication aspect of your skill set and also building real relationships with your coworkers and your team is so critical. And when I also talk about building relationships, it's not just like always transactional, like, oh, letter of reference, or what advice do you have for someone who would like to get to where you are today? It's like actually knowing the people on a human level and like having coffee with them sometimes just to hear about their family. Because when you know someone really well, that's when you can really learn from them a lot. And I think that really resonated with me, because my concept of networking as a young person it felt awkward because I saw it in this awkward way. It clicked in my head that networking, business is all human beings and people that relate relate to each other on an emotional level, you want to spend your time with people that you trust. They know what they're doing. They can be relied upon. Like, just think about those things and approach your networking in a way of like, how can I make myself known as a reliable person to this person? And how do I just get to know this person so that on a deeper level? Because there's so many different ways you can learn from someone too. Like, not just like specific tools, how to use them, but like maybe there is an aspect to their job that you'll learn about that will make you want to totally rethink your next career step. And I think when we hung out a little bit before this, one thing that I said, and we joked that it was like soundbitey, it was like, your career is just a series of the next step that feels the rightest.
That's true.
It sounds horrible, but it literally, it feels so true to me. And it sounds like it feels kind of true to your career at this point.
Definitely. I love what I get to do. Do I know it's what I'm going to want to do in 10 years? Absolutely not. But I like have confidence in myself that I'll know what the rightest move will be in 10 years from now. So having like that faith in myself and also like doing the groundwork now to set myself up for when I'm there in X amount of years. So that's why, for example, like I'm in my MBA part-time. It's because, you know, education is something no one can take from you. So being able to invest into myself right now, I know will pay off.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about your MBA journey, because I think there are so many people listening in of all ages that are considering MBA programs and how to balance that and work. Do you want to talk a little bit about at what point you started thinking about an MBA and like where in the timeline of your career you started the MBA? And where?
Yeah. So I always knew that I wanted to go back to school. I always loved being in a classroom. And I also, as I was doing the early roles in my career, was like, wow, there are some gaps in what I know about business that would be really great to fulfill through being in a classroom again. And so as I was looking to get my MBA, something I knew that I didn't want to do was pause my career to do it. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it part-time. I'm in one of the best cities, if not the best city in the world for this. Let me do it while I'm here in New York City, and applied to a couple of schools here. And the debate was, do I get in 6 figures of debt or none? So I did opt for the latter. So I'm at Baruch, which is a public city, University of New York, something like that here. And I'm there in person twice a week. And it's been a really great opportunity to not only learn as in classroom, but also meet a bunch of people who are in a similar boat as me. Because if you're working full time and then going to class for 3 hours after work, that means you have some real tenacity and hardworking skills. There's people who are parents, there's people of all ages who are there. And so it's been really valuable to get to know more people and see kind of what those experiences are.
And apply what you're learning immediately to your job.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the classes I'm in now is statistics, which like theoretically I did do statistics in undergrad, but it all left the short-term memory. So I have to do that now and do get to bring it to work. As an email marketer and marketers in general, you're often A/B testing different creatives. And like whether we like it or not, that is statistics.
Yeah.
So it's definitely skills I get to use every day.
I hated statistics in college. But nothing against statistics, but I hated it. But I think it would have resonated a lot more with me, and I would have been a lot more of an enthusiastic student in my studying if I had something that was immediately applicable to it, like A/B testing and marketing, because that's exactly right. There's actually so much statistics that takes place in our jobs in marketing.
Definitely.
Actually.
I'm like, this is why we're doing it. Another class is like a leadership-based class. And one of my favorite articles from that was that people would rather work with lovable fools, so maybe someone who's not the best at their job but is really kind to work with, than someone who is a competent jerk or someone who is not fun to work with.
That makes sense.
But does their job well. And that definitely goes back to what we were talking about earlier as far as like having those great relationships and people will want to support you.
This is so good. I'm so glad that I get to talk to you and students that are listening get to hear from you, because I think there is so many gems that you're talking about right now as far as like your choice to pursue a part-time program. You're deciding between a couple schools in New York. You knew you wanted to be in New York, so that's also an important aspect. And like pursuing the one that was more financially feasible for you. So when did you start thinking MBA though? Did you know?
So for a while, I thought I was going, especially when I was in theater, I really thought I was going to do a theatrical management program, because I was like, I want to be in that industry and I want to have my own theater company. Who knows, maybe I will still, but I decided that I wanted something a little more general and to fill the gap that I have. A class that I'm mildly looking forward to but very nervous about is finance. As a marketing person, having every marketing decision you make needs to have a financial basis. And I often, those phrases in finance and acronyms go right over my head. So those are educational opportunities that you get from an MBA.
Yeah, and we were talking about this a little. We had coffee before this, so we were hanging. But we were also chatting about how at the highest leadership positions in these companies is a lot of people with MBAs, mostly people with MBAs. Not saying that's the only route to get into a leadership position or a position of influence within an organization, but it certainly helps. And just looking at the leadership boards of today, very high representation of people with MBAs. So I think that, of course, look at your own situation, but an MBA, pursuing an education can't be taken away from you. And certainly if you're going into it with really strong sense of purpose like you, it can really pay off.
And I do want to clarify, I've always been like a very intentional and purposeful person.
Yeah.
But let me like clarify, I had a lot of category 5 mental breakdowns. Like it was a tough journey to get there. So like I'm acting all positive about it now, but it was a really hard decision to make and weighing like, do I want to sacrifice this amount of my social life and like this amount of my budget to do it? So it definitely took a lot of weighing the decision.
And how are you doing so far? Because when did the program start?
I'm fresh into it. So this is my first semester. But so far it is going well. Like I'm able to, I'm so grateful for the organization that I work for. They are so like, they champion me doing it. And so when I have to leave early for a class or if I'm stressed about an exam, like they're totally understanding if I take the time I need. That socially everyone find other time for it. And I think there's a lot of conversation about the MBA not being the hardest degree in the world. So I think it's also what you make of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's totally what you make of it. Like if you are going to have your hand held and be really passive, you're not going to get as much out of it as you would if you were like, you're going into debt for a lot of people pursuing an MBA. And it's, opportunity cost, time that would otherwise be out with friends or working more. So approach it. It is an investment because it can really make an impact on your salary, in your networking, like in your stature your stature in the eyes of others, if you're navigating these like networking spaces in your industry. So I think being really intentional is really critical. I want to talk a little bit about Lola. I think Lola is such a cool company, and I am familiar as a consumer, like how purpose-driven Lola is. I don't know, are they the first product coming to market touting to be totally organic? Or not, touting is not the right word, but is transparent. Yes.
Yeah, so Lola was founded about a decade ago now with the question of what are we actually putting in our vaginas, in particular to tampons and period care products. And so based on answering that question, Lola was founded to be gynecologist approved and made with organic cotton. And that transparency really lives on to today. And it's something I love in my own career is working on a brand that is not only mission-based, but following through on that. So some of the really exciting things that Lola has been up to this year include a huge study that went completely viral.
This is huge. Everyone listen to this.
So a study from UC Berkeley came out and was viral over the summer, finding that several unnamed tampon brands having detectable layers of heavy metals like arsenic in the tampons. And so Lola immediately stepped up before the end of July even, so just weeks after this study came out, with testing with our manufacturer and additional third-party testing, and confirmed in 16 of our period care products that no lead, arsenic, mercury, and more additional metals were not found in any of Lola's tampons, pads, or liners.
And also kudos to Lola for coming in and actually doing that testing and having the confidence in your product to have like third-party testers come in. And it was right at the heels of this broader study. Was it out of UC Berkeley, the earlier study? And they didn't mention names. They just said like leading brands. But what Lola did right after that study came out was to actually test some of those market leading brands. So You can actually go, and I'll put this link in the captions too of like where consumers can read more about this study. But this was totally shocking to me that there's like mercury and arsenic. These are poisons, by the way.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we will say cotton comes from the ground. There are metals in the ground, but we don't want to be putting those metals that are toxic in our bodies.
In traceable amounts.
In traceable amounts.
Because traceable amounts means the amounts that are actually can impact your body. So thank you so much for talking about that. I want to talk about the tampon tax. Let's talk about the tampon. What is the tampon tax and why am I so annoyed with it?
Okay. I wish I have a better definition for you. I could look it up right now. I feel
wait.
like I'm like
I did already.
Just to be real with you.
No. I will do.
Okay.
But like in your own words, I would love to hear about how Lola is helping like young women and women who are poverty, like have experience with not being able to afford period care products. How Lola has come in and made products available to young women and women without financial means.
Definitely. So in 2024 alone, Lola has donated over 1 million period care products to those audiences of women and menstruators who need the products for their bodies. This is a necessity item. And so in particular, donated 500,000 tampons for Period Action Day, which is a day that we really focus on that tampon tax. That was back in October.
So in the US, menstrual products, tampons, pads, menstrual cups are considered taxable goods in 29 states. So that means these states do not exempt them from sales tax, which contributes to the financial burden on those who need these essential products. And only 23 states and Washington, D.C. have eliminated the sales tax on menstrual products, although this is not a uniform policy across the country. So the tampon tax is essentially referring to tampons and menstrual products being considered taxable like luxury items, actually, in the legislation in some jurisdictions. So I'm very annoyed by this because, I mean, over half the population are menstruating individuals, and this is not a luxury bodily process. This is a fact of our bodies. And to have this extra layer of taxation, to have this extra layer of financial burden on women and menstruating people we need to change that.
We do need to change that, especially as the age where adolescents are getting their period is getting younger and younger. There's a lot of reasons out there for why, but it means that it's only growing, this need for those products. So I will say, we might have to fact check a little bit, but there is, in those states that do have that tax, you can actually go to, I need to look up the organization, but you can go to their website and actually get the tampon tax reimbursed. So Lola partners with Period, the menstrual movement, which is a global youth-powered nonprofit to end period poverty. And so that was that's the organization that we partnered with to donate 500,000 tampons this year.
Okay.
Yes.
You want to say that from the top?
Okay. Lola partnered with Period, the menstrual movement, this year to donate 500,000 tampons. And this is an organization that's a global youth-powered nonprofit that's fighting to end period poverty and period stigma.
That's awesome. And I think it's really important to talk about periods and to end the stigma, because if we're not talking about periods and menstruation and the ways that menstruating people that experience, that's when policies like the tampon tax get passed under our noses. That are, these policies that are actively putting women and menstruating people at a disadvantage financially, educationally, because if you don't have the right products, period care products, it's going to take time away from school. You won't be able to show up in the classroom comfortably or hygienically. If you're not using the proper menstrual products, you're using other things that are not as hygienic. You could put yourself more at risk of infections and things like that. So I think that this is such an important way that Lola is showing up for women and menstruating people. And I really love all the ways that Lola gives back in the way of providing education, free products, partnering with nonprofits. And we'll put these nonprofits, we'll link them on our website. But I just really appreciate that a corporate company is really they're walking the talk, or that's not the right word.
And that was really important in my own career in choosing where I go. Like, there are these really beautiful pillars that Lola has, but are they actually doing something about about them. And yes, like I can confidently say that the foundation of Lola is lived out today. Even things like you can pause your subscription. So that's in the subscription world that I manage. You can pause your subscription, and instead of just pausing it, you can actually opt to donate the products that you would have had.
Oh, cool. I love that.
Yeah, it goes to an organization called I Support the Girls.
Okay, great. And can you talk a little bit about the leadership team too? Because I think that's really important to discuss.
Lola is a part of Forum Brands, which is a holding company for different brands that are focused on family and health and wellness. Being a part of Forum has really allowed us a ton of opportunities. Like doing that testing, we were able to turn it around because we're in this really great atmosphere. Within the leadership team, Lola is all women, and not only is it all women, but there are also women who have a lot of confidence and education and also have support from leadership. The Forum leadership team is comprised of all different sorts of people.
Men and women.
Yeah, exactly. Men and women who allow the Lola's team, like our voice to be heard. So it's interesting as far as rhetoric around wanting to support Lola because it is female founded, and that's the reason I joined. And so knowing that it is still that mission, it is still comprised of people who care about our customers and about our mission.
But I also want to talk about like anything that you feel worth highlighting about your job or some things you have on the horizon with Lola. Is there something you'd want to mention there?
I think things on the horizon that are exciting are just because of the state of Lola being so positive. We do have really exciting initiatives. When you're a marketer, it's way more, I have to check with my team, I can say this, but when you are in marketing, it's way more fun to be a marketer when you have a budget.
Yes. Yes. I think you're allowed to say that.
Yeah.
I think
okay,
it's
great.
Universal truth
right?
at this point.
Yeah. So I've been in a mix of situations where there is or isn't, and Lola is, and that means that we can do a lot of really cool things in 2025 and in a space where, because the team is comprised of experts, that we all trust and support each other.
Okay, great. Yeah. And are there any like trends or something that is interesting from the world of life cycle marketing? I mean, that's a role, or that's a world that I'm familiar with, like being agency side and my specialty being digital marketing, but I'm not a specialized practitioner of email marketing, SMS marketing. So I'm super curious about what you have to say in terms of like trends or like what you're seeing as being like really impactful, and answer that however you'd like.
I would say the customer or the user, like the expectations of a brand get higher and higher by the day. And so you need to meet the customer in those places. And that's especially in subscription marketing.
Yeah. Because so many alternatives.
Or even just, I don't want to subscribe because that means I'm tied down. And so I'd rather just go to a store and buy. Like there is a lot to being a subscriber to something that gives people pause. And so you need to provide subscription programs where it's easy to manage. The products are reliable. You know, we're going to make sure that we get this to you when you want it. We're going to be, I think a big initiative that's exciting is things that are around cancellation prevention. So how can we keep you as a subscriber? But if you're going to cancel, and asking them why they cancel and actually taking action based on those cancellation reasons. So I think that's a huge piece of subscription. That's a trend, is because these expectations of customers for the brand are growing, we need to step up and meet them. So that's one. And I'd also say stepping up and meeting them based on those pillars and values of the brand, like authenticity and transparency. So going back to earlier, like walking the walk, like customers expect that. And I think that trend will only continue to grow, where people who are already bought into the brand, they want to keep seeing those great things from you.
I really love that you've got experience actually being a copywriter too, because I had my hand in doing some of that for this podcast, and it's really, really hard. Copywriting is so hard. And like there's A/B testing that needs to be done to get your messaging right, and really curious to hear from you about advice around messaging, copywriting, subject lines. I don't know, man.
Subject lines. Oh my gosh. I think subject lines are really interesting from a copywriting perspective, because you're not only trying to get someone to open, like the user, but you're also trying to get the email inbox to accept your email.
Right.
So it's a mix of, it's like a fun science of deliverability and impression.
And deliverability. So like for people who maybe are not familiar, it's like, so let's say you use Google, like Gmail. Gmail will have certain parameters, I guess you would say, like certain things baked into I'm just butchering this so much, but like the back end of how Gmail works, that there's certain signals in an email that will get this data will be taken in by Gmail and then determine whether or not that email actually lands in the person's inbox or not. And the reason why they've got these parameters, good reasons, like to prevent spam emails, scam emails. There's a lot of like automatic things that happen in the process of sending an email and consumer end user receiving that email that are really technical, actually. When Hannah talks about like deliverability, that's what she's referring to. And then there's the totally other side of the coin that's related, talking about how to make an emotional impact on a buyer and like traditional marketing, appealing to a need, presenting a solution, things like that.
Yeah, and I think a trend within that is very anti. I think users and customers they've always been smart, but they're getting smarter. Like they know when they're being sold to.
Right.
They know when you're not being real with them. They know when they just want to delete your email. And so I love this anti-trend of just being a little more honest in your emails. And even an anti-trend would be like doing a text-based email, like when you get an email from a brand and it's like from our founder or from the customer service person. Like that's a whole other strategy in itself and a really interesting trend in email.
And that's actually not just in email. Mm-hmm. Like I think there is so much a movement in content right now of like founder mode and like talking from individual people in your company, like them being the influencers as opposed to like a celebrity or someone else that you pay to be in an ad or a commercial. Like going back to the point about people wanting to follow people and authentic brands, I think throwing a little wrench in what people typically expect from their email marketing, like a personal letter from a founder or a personal letter from like a customer support person, like their name, little details, like to humanize like the brand on an individual level, that really resonates with me. And it seems to be resonating with consumers. And that's why we're talking about it in marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah, when it comes down to it, like I'm also a consumer.
Yeah.
I also hate getting spammy emails in my inbox. So how can I make, like I'm in charge of this customer experience in the marketing lens. So how can I make that the best experience possible?
Yeah. And we actually met in a really cute, cool way. So I met Hannah at a all-women's e-commerce conference called She Innovates. And it was here in New York. And it was just a couple weeks ago. It wasn't even that long ago. And first of all, highly recommend women's conferences. I feel like it's such a cool energy to be around, especially She Innovates. The one that we went to is the second one that the organizers had put on. The organizers are actually women that are in our industry, e-com industry. Jess Servalon is one. It's actually an all-female team with folks represented from Yotpo, Recharge. Jess has her own agency, but she's also a marketer and influencer. And yeah, we met at the conference and just chatted. And when I reached out to you afterward and talked to you about my podcast, you were so nice about it. And you were so supportive. And actually all the women that I followed up with after, also super supportive and willing to be on. And I really appreciate that. I feel like a couple takeaways from that. Go to women's conferences. They're really cool. 2, don't be afraid to reach out to people and stay open to new experiences because you can learn really cool things and have really interesting opportunities from being open to being interviewed. Hopefully this is good for you too.
Oh, absolutely.
It gives you some visibility and gives Lola some love. There's things that I learned about Lola that make me love the brand even more. And I hope that the audience members that are listening today can really, at the very least, really care about the products they're using, products that are so integral to your life, like menstrual products, like actually care about, those products you're using. And then also have some consciousness and awareness and maybe some anger about things like the tampon tax, and think about access to menstrual care products and how not having access to those items or having those items be more expensive, how that can trickle down and really put people at a disadvantage. I feel really fired up about this topic.
Yes. Now imagine talking about this all day, every day. Like it builds up and it makes me really proud of the Lola team. And also I think the takeaway is the value and benefit of working for a company with a mission makes work so much more intrinsically motivating and exciting.
Yeah. And takeaway from this conversation, like Hannah is so cool.
Oh, thanks. Oh my gosh.
Full stop.
New Instagram bio. Hannah is so cool.
She is I think pursuing your major, but then making sure that your passion in theater still made its way into your life. I think I love to see that. And I think that it's really cool, your tenacity in responding to the professor with a job position. That was a proactive step you took. And then rising in your position within the companies you worked at, being curious, raising your hand for things, not shying away from being a subject matter expert with something that you're learning. I think that has served you really well. And you, how old are you?
25.
Okay, she's 25 and she's killing it. So I think that there's so much that you can take away from Hannah's story. And I'm just so grateful for you to take a chance on the show and be interviewed today.
This was so much fun. Thank you for having me. And I actually learned a lot too. So yeah, I'll be taking a lot of this back.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to share with the audience before we part today, end our conversation?
I would say more plugs for Lola and also support your local arts.
Yes, please. The arts are so important and the arts are really important to you. Make it a priority in your life to continue, like weave that into your job, weave that into your daily life, because those passions are why we get up in the morning.
Yes. Once an artist, always an artist.
Yes. Thanks everyone. Thanks for listening.